A young billionaire returns home unannounced and freezes when he sees his 7-year-old son with the new maid. But one heartbreaking detail in that moment shatters his world forever. Marcus Stone, a 29-year-old tycoon, returns unexpectedly from a business trip to find his 7-year-old son, Tyler, laughing with Emma, the new 25-year-old maid. What shocks him isn't their closeness, but something far deeper hidden in that innocent scene. 3 years after losing his wife in a tragic accident, Marcus had locked himself away emotionally, turning his mansion into a silent mausoleum where laughter was forbidden. Now, for the first time since Sarah's death, his son is genuinely happy, yet this joy ignites a furious storm inside Marcus. As Emma struggles to understand her employer's hostility, devastating family secrets begin to surface. The true source of Marcus's anger is not jealousy or overprotection, but a crushing guilt tied to the night Sarah died. Her shocking revelation about her final words will upend everything he thought he knew about love, forgiveness, and second chances. What Marcus doesn't suspect is that Emma carries a secret of her own, one powerful enough to either save him or destroy him forever. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Your support means everything to this channel, and I love reading your predictions and thoughts. The mahogany doors of the Stone mansion swung open with the weight of expensive silence, broken only by the soft click of Marcus Stone's Italian leather shoes against the marble foyer. At 29, he commanded boardrooms and bent million-dollar deals to his will, but nothing had prepared him for what awaited him in his own home. He had returned 3 days early from the Tokyo merger, his private jet cutting through storm clouds that seemed to mirror the turbulence in his chest. The house should have been tomb quiet, the way it had been for 3 years since Sarah's death. Instead, something impossible drifted down the grand staircase, the sound he had buried along with his wife, his 7-year-old son Tyler's laughter. Marcus froze, his briefcase slipping from his grip and hitting the floor with a thunderous crack that echoed through the vaulted ceiling. The laughter continued, pure and unguarded, coming from Tyler's playroom on the 2nd floor. But there was something else. A woman's voice, warm and musical, weaving through his son's giggles like sunlight through stained glass. His heart hammered against his ribs as he climbed the stairs, each step a betrayal of the sacred silence he had cultivated. Mrs. Henderson, his longtime housekeeper, had mentioned hiring additional help while he was away, but she had assured him it would be someone who understood the rules. No loud noises, no disruption of Tyler's strict routine, no attempts to fill the void that Sarah had left behind. The playroom door stood ajar, and Marcus pressed himself against the wall, his breath catching as he peered inside. Tyler sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, his dark hair falling across his forehead, exactly the way Sarah's used to. But it wasn't his son that made Marcus's world tilt off its axis. It was the young woman kneeling beside him. She couldn't have been more than 25, with long dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and wearing a plain white uniform that somehow made her seem luminous. Emma Rodriguez had been working for them for only 2 weeks, but she had already committed the unforgivable sin of making Tyler smile. Really smile, not the polite, hollow expression he wore when Marcus was around. And then the dragon realized, Emma was saying, her voice animated as she moved a small toy figure across the rug, that the treasure he was guarding wasn't gold or jewels. It was something much more precious. What was it? Tyler asked, his eyes bright with anticipation. Marcus hadn't seen that light in his son's eyes since before the accident. Friendship, Emma whispered conspiratorially. The dragon had been so busy protecting his treasure that he forgot how lonely he was. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He watched Tyler nod solemnly, as if he understood something profound in the simple fairy tale. And perhaps he did. Perhaps this stranger had reached his son in ways that Marcus, his own father, had failed to do for 3 agonizing years. But it was what happened next that shattered something fundamental inside Marcus's chest. Tyler, his reserved, careful boy, who hadn't shown spontaneous affection since his mother's funeral, suddenly threw his arms around Emma's neck and hugged her fiercely. "I wish you could be my mommy," Tyler whispered, his small voice carrying clearly to where Marcus stood, frozen in the hallway. Emma's face transformed, a mixture of surprise and tenderness that made her beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with her features. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking Tyler's hair with infinite gentleness. "You have the most wonderful daddy who loves you very, very much." The rage that consumed Marcus was instant and volcanic. Not because his son had formed an attachment to this woman, though that was terrifying enough, but because of the voice that whispered in his mind, Sarah's voice from the last night of her life. "Promise me, Marcus, if something happens to me, don't let Tyler grow up without knowing how to love." He had failed. Spectacularly, completely unforgivably failed. And now this stranger, this intruder in their carefully constructed world of grief, was giving his son what Marcus had been too broken to provide: joy. Marcus turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the thick carpeting. He needed time to think, to process what he had witnessed, to understand why his first instinct was to fire Emma Rodriguez immediately and restore the suffocating quiet that had become their family's defining characteristic. But as he reached his study and closed the door behind him, Tyler's laughter followed him, haunting and pure, a sound that reminded him of everything he had lost and everything he had failed to give back to his son. The merger documents lay forgotten on his desk as Marcus sank into his leather chair, his hands trembling with emotions he thought he had buried alongside Sarah. Emma Rodriguez had been in their home for exactly 14 days, and in that time she had accomplished what 3 years of expensive therapy and careful routine had not. She had brought his son back to life, and Marcus hated her for it. The grandfather clock in Marcus's study chimed 11 times, each note a reminder that he had been sitting in darkness for hours, staring at the family photograph on his desk. Sarah's smile seemed to mock him from behind the silver frame, radiant, trusting, eternal. Tyler, barely 4 in the picture, was laughing as she spun him around in their garden, both of them dizzy with happiness that Marcus had captured accidentally while trying to photograph the new gazebo. He had been working then too, always working. Even on that perfect Sunday afternoon, he had been more concerned with documenting his architectural investment than joining in their play. Sarah had teased him about it later, when they were lying in bed, her head on his chest as she scrolled through the photos on his camera. "You missed the moment," she had said, but she was smiling. "While you were focusing on the gazebo, you caught something much better." Now 3 years later, Marcus understood what she meant. The gazebo had been destroyed in the same storm that took Sarah's life, but the joy in that photograph had survived, locked away in silver and glass, a testament to what they had been before everything fell apart. The soft knock on his study door made him look up from the photograph. Mrs. Henderson peered in, her weathered face creased with concern. "Mr. Stone, I saw your car in the driveway. We weren't expecting you until Friday." "The merger concluded early," Marcus said, his voice hoarse from hours of silence. "I trust everything has been satisfactory in my absence." Mrs. Henderson stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. She had been with the family since before Tyler was born, and she was one of the few people who dared to challenge Marcus when necessary. "That depends on what you mean by satisfactory," she said carefully. "If you're asking whether the house has been maintained to your standards, then yes. If you're asking whether that boy of yours has been happy for the first time since his mother died, then I'd say we've exceeded all expectations." Marcus set the photograph face down on his desk. "About the new employee, Miss Rodriguez." "Emma, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "Her name is Emma, and she's been a godsend. That child has been talking non-stop since she arrived. Did you know he can multiply double-digit numbers in his head? Did you know he's been having nightmares about you not coming home, just like his mother didn't come home?" The words hit their target with devastating precision. Marcus had known about Tyler's academic gifts. The boy was exceptional, operating on a level that astounded his private tutors. But the nightmares, those were news to him. "Tyler has been having nightmares. Every night for months," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice gentle but unyielding. "Emma's the first person who's been able to get him to talk about them. She sits with him when he wakes up crying, tells him stories until he falls back asleep. She's not trying to replace Miss Sarah, Mr. Stone. She's trying to help that boy heal." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Sarah and Tyler had played that long-ago Sunday. The gazebo was gone, but the roses Sarah had planted still bloomed every spring, wild and untended since her death. "What exactly did you tell Miss Rodriguez about our family situation?" "Nothing more than she needed to know. That Tyler lost his mother in an accident, that you travel frequently for business, that the boy needs stability and care. She didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any." But Emma had seen enough, Marcus realized. She had seen Tyler's carefully controlled behavior, the way he moved through the house like a ghost afraid of disturbing the dead. She had seen the absence of family photographs in the common areas, the way conversation died when Sarah's name was mentioned. She had seen a 7-year-old boy drowning in his father's grief. "The night Mrs. Stone died," Marcus said suddenly, the words torn from him without permission, "she made me promise something." "Mrs." Henderson waited, her silence an invitation he wasn't sure he could accept. "She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I wouldn't let Tyler grow up without knowing how to love." Marcus's voice cracked on the last word. "But I don't know how to keep that promise, Mrs. Henderson. I don't know how to teach him something I can barely remember myself." The older woman crossed the room and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Maybe that's not your job anymore, Mr. Stone. Maybe sometimes we need help keeping our promises." Through the window, Marcus could see Tyler's bedroom, where a soft light still glowed. Emma was probably still there, he realized, making sure the boy felt safe enough to sleep. She was doing what Marcus should be doing, being the parent Tyler needed, instead of the broken shell of a man who could only offer financial security and emotional distance. "I saw them together tonight," Marcus admitted. "Tyler told her he wished she could be his mother, and that scared you." "It terrified me," Marcus said honestly, "not because I'm afraid of losing him to someone else, but because I'm afraid I've already lost him to my own grief. What if it's too late, Mrs. Henderson? What if I've missed too much, been absent too long? That boy worships you, Mr. Stone. He keeps every article about your business successes in a scrapbook under his bed. He practices putting on ties because he wants to be just like his daddy. But he needs more than worship. He needs connection. He needs to know that his father sees him as more than a responsibility to be managed." Marcus turned from the window, and for the first time in 3 years he let Mrs. Henderson see the tears in his eyes. "I don't know how to do this without her. Sarah was the heart of everything good in our lives. I was just the man who paid for it all. Miss Sarah saw something in you worth loving, worth marrying, worth having a child with. That man is still in there, Mr. Stone. Tyler's waiting for him to come home." Dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold as Marcus stood in Tyler's doorway, watching his son sleep. The boy lay curled on his side, clutching a small stuffed dragon that Marcus had never seen before, probably a gift from Emma. Tyler's face, relaxed in sleep, looked heartbreakingly young, and Marcus was struck by how much his son resembled Sarah in the early morning light. He had spent the night walking through the house, seeing it through new eyes. The formal living room where Tyler wasn't allowed to play, the dining room where they ate their silent meals, each lost in their own thoughts, the library where Tyler did his homework alone, while Marcus worked late into the evening. It was a museum, not a home, and Marcus had been its curator rather than its inhabitant. The soft sound of footsteps in the hallway made him turn. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, dressed in her simple uniform, her hair already neat despite the early hour. She stopped when she saw him, surprise flickering across her features. "Mr. Stone," she said quietly, mindful of Tyler's sleeping form. "I didn't expect you back until Friday." "Business concluded early," Marcus said, studying her face in the morning light. She was pretty, but more than that, she had an openness about her that reminded him painfully of Sarah. "I understand Tyler has been responding well to your presence here." Emma's cheeks colored slightly. "He's a wonderful boy, Mr. Stone, incredibly bright and thoughtful. You should be very proud." "I am." The words came easier than Marcus expected. "But I'm also concerned about the level of attachment he seems to be forming." Emma's expression grew guarded. "If I've overstepped any boundaries, I apologize. Mrs. Henderson said Tyler needed stability and care. I was simply trying to provide that." "And you have," Marcus admitted, perhaps more effectively than his own father has managed. The confession hung between them in the quiet hallway. Emma's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected such honesty from the man who employed her. "Mr. Stone, may I speak freely?" Marcus nodded, though every instinct warned him he wouldn't like what she had to say. "Tyler talks about you constantly. He's incredibly proud of you, but he's lonely. He misses his mother, of course, but I think he misses you too. Even when you're here, he feels like you're somewhere else." The truth in her words cut deep. "His mother died in a car accident 3 years ago," Marcus said, offering the sanitized version he told everyone. "It's been difficult for both of us." "I can't imagine," Emma said softly. "But Tyler is 7 years old, Mr. Stone. He spent nearly half his life grieving, and children aren't meant to carry that weight alone. Neither are fathers." Marcus looked back at his sleeping son, remembering the joy on Tyler's face the night before. "He hugged you last night when you were telling him the story about the dragon." "Tyler doesn't. He hasn't been physically affectionate since his mother died." "Children need affection," Emma said simply. "They need to know they're lovable, that they're worth someone's time and attention. Tyler is starving for connection, Mr. Stone. Not just with me, with you." "I don't know how," Marcus said, the admission torn from somewhere deep inside his chest. "I don't know how to be what he needs. Sarah was. She was everything warm and good about our family. I was just the provider." Emma stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "That's not what Tyler sees when he looks at you. He sees his hero, the strongest man in the world. But heroes can be gentle too, Mr. Stone. They can cry and laugh and play silly games and still be heroic." From Tyler's room came a small sound, the whimper of a child caught in a bad dream. Emma moved instinctively toward the door, but Marcus caught her arm gently. "Let me," he said. He entered Tyler's room and sat carefully on the edge of the bed. His son was thrashing slightly, caught in the grip of whatever nightmare plagued his sleep. Marcus had seen this before, usually rushing past the door on his way to his study, leaving Mrs. Henderson or now Emma to handle the situation. "Tyler," Marcus said softly, placing a tentative hand on his son's shoulder. "Hey, buddy, it's just a dream." Tyler's eyes flew open, confusion and fear giving way to wonder when he saw his father sitting beside him. "Daddy, you're home." "I'm home," Marcus confirmed, his throat tight. "I heard you having a bad dream." Tyler sat up, unconsciously moving closer to Marcus. "I dreamed you went away on a plane and never came back, just like Mommy went away in the car." The simple statement shattered something inside Marcus's chest. All this time he had thought Tyler was too young to understand the connection between departure and death, but his son had been living with that fear for 3 years. "Tyler, look at me," Marcus said, gently cupping his son's face in his hands. "I will always come back to you, always. Do you understand?" "Do you—" "But Mommy said she would come back from her meeting too," Tyler whispered, tears pooling in his dark eyes. Marcus felt his own tears threatening. "Mommy didn't choose to leave us, buddy. Sometimes bad things happen that nobody can control. But I promise you I will always fight to come home to you. Come." Tyler threw his arms around Marcus's neck with the same fierce affection he had shown Emma the night before. "I missed you so much, Daddy." "I missed you too," Marcus whispered, meaning it more than he had ever meant anything in his life. "I missed you too." As he held his son, Marcus became aware of Emma standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had witnessed something she wasn't meant to see. The moment when Marcus Stone, the millionaire who controlled boardrooms and bent the world to his will, finally learned that the most important merger of his life was the one between his broken heart and his son's need for love. But even as Tyler settled back into sleep, secure in his father's arms, Marcus knew that this moment of connection was only the beginning. The real work, learning to live again, to love again, to be the father Tyler deserved, would require more courage than any business deal had ever demanded. And he wasn't sure he was strong enough to succeed where it mattered most. The following morning brought an unusual sound to the Stone mansion, Marcus's laughter echoing from the breakfast room. He sat across from Tyler, attempting to flip pancakes, while his son provided commentary that ranged from encouraging to brutally honest. "That one looks like a map of Texas, Daddy," Tyler said, giggling as Marcus deposited another misshapen pancake onto the growing stack. "I was aiming for a circle," Marcus admitted, flour somehow dusted across his expensive dress shirt. "Your mother was the expert at this. I usually just order breakfast from the hotel restaurant." Tyler's face grew thoughtful. "Emma makes really good pancakes, they're perfect circles, and she draws faces on them with syrup." The mention of Emma sent a familiar twist through Marcus's chest, but this time it wasn't anger. It was something more complex, gratitude mixed with an emotion he wasn't ready to name. "Speaking of Emma," Marcus said carefully, "I should probably meet with her officially, discuss her duties, make sure she understands what we need here." "She understands lots of things," Tyler said seriously. "She understands that I get scared at night, and she understands that sometimes I don't want to talk about Mommy, because it makes my chest hurt, and she understands that you work really hard because you love us." Marcus paused, the spatula halfway to the pan. "She said that?" "Not exactly. But when I told her I wished you didn't have to go away so much, she said that sometimes daddies work extra hard when they're sad, because providing for their families is how they show love when words are too difficult." The wisdom in Emma's explanation stunned Marcus. She had managed to reframe his emotional absence in terms a 7-year-old could understand and accept, without making excuses or false promises. "Tyler, what else do you and Emma talk about?" His son launched into an animated description of their conversations. Stories about brave dragons who learned friendship, discussions about why some people are sad for a long time after someone they love goes away, and Tyler's own questions about whether it was okay to be happy, sometimes even when Mommy couldn't be happy with them. "Emma says Mommy would want us to be happy," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She says that's what love means, wanting the people you care about to have joy, even when you can't be there to see it." Marcus had to turn away, pretending to focus on the pancakes as tears threatened to overwhelm him. Emma had given his son permission to heal, something Marcus had been too broken to provide. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, surveying the flour-dusted kitchen with barely concealed amusement. "Shall I call for hazmat cleanup, Mr. Stone?" "Very funny," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "Actually, could you ask Emma to join us?" "I'd like to speak with her." Tyler brightened immediately. "Can she have pancakes with us? The weird-shaped ones taste just as good as the round ones." When Emma entered the breakfast room 15 minutes later, Marcus was struck again by her natural grace. She had changed from her uniform into simple jeans and a blue sweater that made her dark eyes luminous, and her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. "Mr. Stone, you wanted to see me?" "Please sit," Marcus said, suddenly nervous in a way that had nothing to do with business negotiations. "Tyler was just telling me about some of your conversations. I wanted to thank you for helping him process things I didn't know how to address." Emma took a seat beside Tyler, who immediately began showing her his favorite of the misshapen pancakes. "Children are remarkably resilient, Mr. Stone. Sometimes they just need someone to listen without judgment and help them understand that their feelings are normal." "And what about fathers who don't know how to listen without judgment?" The question hung in the air, more vulnerable than Marcus had intended. Emma studied his face with those perceptive dark eyes. "I think fathers who ask that question are already halfway to finding the answer," she said softly. Tyler, oblivious to the undercurrents of adult conversation, was constructing an elaborate story about his Texas-shaped pancake going on adventures. Marcus found himself genuinely listening, asking questions, engaging with his son's imagination in a way he hadn't done since Sarah's death. "Daddy, will you read me a story tonight?" Tyler asked suddenly. "A real story, not just the business magazines." "Of course," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "What kind of story would you like?" "One where the daddy dragon learns to play with the baby dragon again," Tyler said with 7-year-old directness. Emma's eyes met Marcus's across the table, and he saw understanding there, along with something that might have been hope. After breakfast, as Tyler ran to get ready for his tutoring session, Marcus found himself alone with Emma in the kitchen. She was washing dishes with efficient movements, humming softly under her breath. "Emma, can I ask you something?" She turned, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. "Of course. Why did you take this job, Mrs.? Henderson mentioned you're overqualified. You have a degree in early childhood development. You could be working at private schools, making more money, having a more traditional schedule. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. Sometimes people need a change of scenery to heal from their own losses, she said finally. Tyler isn't the only one learning to live with grief, Mr. Stone. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, Tyler's voice echoed from upstairs, calling for Emma to help him find his math workbook. She smiled apologetically and hurried away, leaving Marcus with more questions than answers. That afternoon, Marcus made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. He cancelled his meetings and took Tyler to Central Park. They rode the carousel, fed ducks at the pond, and Tyler chattered non-stop about everything and nothing, his joy infectious and pure. "Daddy, are you going to stay home more now?" "You?" Tyler asked as they walked hand in hand through the autumn leaves. "I'm going to try," Marcus promised. "I might not be perfect at it right away, but I want to learn." "Emma says learning new things is scary, but exciting," Tyler said wisely. "Like when I learned to ride my bike or when you learned to make pancakes this morning." That evening, Marcus kept his promise about the bedtime story. He sat on Tyler's bed reading from a collection of fairy tales, making different voices for the characters and watching his son's face light up with delight. When Tyler finally drifted off to sleep, Marcus lingered in the doorway, memorizing the peaceful expression on his son's face. Emma appeared beside him in the hallway, her presence soft and unobtrusive. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, "for giving him back his childhood, for reminding me what it means to be his father. You always knew, Mr. Stone. You just needed permission to remember." As she turned to go to her own room, Marcus found himself speaking again, driven by an impulse he didn't fully understand. "Emma, would you like to join Tyler and me for dinner tomorrow night? As our guest, not as our employee?" Her smile was radiant. "I'd like that very much." But neither of them could have predicted that by tomorrow night, everything they thought they knew about each other would change forever. Marcus stood at his office window the next day, staring down at the bustling Manhattan street, while his mind remained fixed on the transformation happening in his own home. The merger documents on his desk lay untouched. For the first time in 3 years, business seemed secondary to the life he was trying to rebuild with Tyler. His assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Mr. Stone, there's a Detective Morrison here to see you. He says it's about your wife's accident case." Marcus's blood turned to ice. Sarah's case had been closed for 3 years. The drunk driver who killed her had been convicted and sentenced, the insurance settled, the legal matters resolved. Why would a detective be here now? Send him in. Detective Morrison was a weathered man in his 50s, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much human tragedy. He settled into the chair across from Marcus's desk, with the careful movements of someone bearing unwelcome news. "Mr. Stone, I know this is unexpected, but new information has come to light regarding your wife's accident. Information that requires us to reopen certain aspects of the investigation." "That's impossible," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting in his chest. "The case was closed. David Brennan was convicted of vehicular manslaughter. What new information could there possibly be?" Detective Morrison opened his folder, extracting several photographs and documents. "Mr. Brennan died in prison 2 weeks ago. Before his death, he confessed to his cellmate that he wasn't actually driving drunk the night of the accident." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Mr. Brennan lied during his initial confession. He claimed responsibility for the accident to protect someone else, someone he cared about deeply. Someone who was actually driving his car that night." Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the window as if distance could somehow shield him from what was coming. "According to his deathbed confession," Detective Morrison continued, "the real driver was his daughter, Emily Brennan. She was 22 at the time, had been struggling with addiction and had borrowed his car without permission. When she hit your wife's vehicle, she panicked and called her father. He arrived at the scene before police and emergency services, switched places with her and claimed he had been driving." The revelation rewritten everything Marcus thought he knew about that horrible night. His daughter, where is she now? "That's where this gets complicated, Mr. Stone. Emily Brennan legally changed her name to Emma Rodriguez after completing rehabilitation 2 years ago. She obtained legitimate documentation, underwent background checks under her new legal identity. The records show someone who had overcome addiction and earned a degree. Nothing that would raise red flags during standard employment screening. Marcus turned from the window, a terrible understanding beginning to dawn. What assumed name? Detective Morrison consulted his notes. Emma Rodriguez. Mr. Stone, the woman currently employed in your home as a housekeeper, is Emily Brennan, the person responsible for your wife's death. The office tilted around Marcus. 3 weeks. Emma had been in his home caring for his son, earning his trust and Tyler's love for 3 weeks. The woman who had helped Tyler heal from his mother's death was the same person who had caused that death. She sought you out deliberately, Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We believe so. Her father's confession included details about his guilt over letting her live with the secret. He mentioned that Emily had become obsessed with your family, following Tyler's progress through private investigators, learning about your struggles. We think she may have engineered the job with your household staff as a way to atone for what she did. Marcus sank into his chair, his mind racing. Emma's overqualification for the position. Her intuitive understanding of grief. Her arrival precisely when Tyler needed her most. It hadn't been coincidence. It had been calculated. Mr. Stone, we need to take her into custody. The statute of limitations hasn't expired, and with Mr. Brennan's confession, we have grounds to charge her with vehicular manslaughter, fleeing the scene of an accident, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. No, Marcus said immediately, then caught himself. I need time to process this, to protect my son. Tyler has become attached to her. I understand this is difficult, but give me 24 hours, Marcus interrupted, to figure out how to handle this with my son. He can't be traumatized again by having someone he cares about suddenly disappear from his life. Detective Morrison studied Marcus's face with professional scrutiny. You're not thinking of warning her, are you? Because that would make you an accessory. I'm thinking of protecting my child from more psychological damage, Marcus said firmly. 24 hours, then you can do whatever you need to do. After the detective left, Marcus sat alone in his office as shadows lengthened across the city. Emma Rodriguez, Emily Brennan, the woman who had killed his wife, was the same woman who had given his son back his laughter. The person responsible for Tyler's deepest trauma had become the catalyst for his healing. The cruel irony was suffocating. Marcus thought about their breakfast that morning. Emma's gentle guidance as Tyler navigated his grief, her insights into what both father and son needed to move forward. Had it all been manipulation, guilt-driven performance, or had her understanding of their pain been so profound precisely because she carried the weight of causing it? His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson. Tyler is asking when you'll be home for dinner. Emma has been cooking all afternoon. She seems nervous about tonight. Marcus stared at the message, remembering how he had invited Emma to join them as a guest rather than an employee. She was probably preparing for what she thought would be a breakthrough evening, a chance to become truly part of their healing process. Instead, it would be her last night in their home before her world, and theirs, exploded into fragments they might never be able to piece back together. Marcus grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. He had a choice to make, and he had until tomorrow morning to decide whether justice mattered more than the fragile happiness Emma had helped restore to his son's life. But as he drove through the darkening streets toward home, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Tyler's face when he realized that the woman who had taught him to love again was the same person who had taken his mother away. Some truths, Marcus thought, were more devastating than any lie. The dining room had been transformed. Emma had set the table with the good china that hadn't been used since Sarah's death, arranged fresh flowers from the garden, and prepared Tyler's favorite meal with the care of someone who understood the significance of the evening. Candles flickered gently, casting warm light across the faces of the 3 people who had somehow become a makeshift family. Tyler chatted excitedly throughout dinner, oblivious to the tension radiating from Marcus, who found himself studying every gesture Emma made, searching for signs of deception in the woman he was beginning to think he could love. "Emma, tell Daddy about the surprise you helped me make," Tyler said, bouncing in his chair with excitement. Emma smiled, but Marcus noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. "Tyler has been working on something very special for you, Mr. Stone. Haven't you, sweetheart?" Tyler nodded eagerly and ran from the room, returning moments later with a small wrapped package. "I made this for you, Daddy." Emma helped with the hard parts. Marcus unwrapped the gift with careful attention, his heart clenching when he revealed a handmade photo album. The cover was decorated with Tyler's artwork, stick figures of a man, a woman, and a small boy under a bright yellow sun. Inside, Tyler had arranged family photographs, including the picture from Marcus's desk that he thought had been private. "I wanted to make a book about our family," Tyler explained, climbing into Marcus's lap to turn the pages. "See, this is Mommy when she was happy. And this is us at Christmas, and this is you teaching me to ride my bike." Each page was carefully crafted, with Tyler's 7-year-old handwriting providing captions. "Daddy works hard for us. Mommy made the best cookies. We were happy together." The final page contained a recent photograph that Marcus didn't recognize. Tyler and himself from that morning, both covered in flour, laughing over their misshapen pancakes. "Emma took that picture," Tyler said proudly. "She said sometimes the most important memories happen when we're not looking for them." Marcus looked up at Emma, who was watching them with tears streaming down her face. In that moment, seeing Tyler's joy and feeling the weight of his son's love, Marcus made a decision that 3 years of grief and 24 hours of devastating knowledge had led him to. "Tyler, could you go get ready for bed, please? I need to talk to Emma about something important." After Tyler reluctantly headed upstairs, Marcus and Emma sat in silence as the candles continued to flicker between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Detective Morrison came to see me today, Emily." Emma's face went completely white, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "You know. I know that your father died in prison 2 weeks ago. I know that he confessed to protecting you. I know that you were driving the car that killed my wife." Emma closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Marcus saw 3 years of anguish that matched his own. "I've wanted to tell you every single day since I've been here," she whispered. "Every time Tyler hugged me, every time you started to trust me, every time I saw how much pain you were both in because of what I did. So why didn't you?" "Because I'm a coward," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Because I was so afraid that if you knew the truth, Tyler would lose someone else who cared about him. Because I thought maybe I could somehow make amends by helping him heal from the trauma I caused." Marcus studied her face, seeing genuine anguish rather than calculated manipulation. "The night of the accident, what happened exactly?" Emma took a shuddering breath. "I had been clean for 3 months, but I relapsed that day. I borrowed my father's car without permission, thinking I was fine to drive. It was raining and I was coming around that curve on Riverside Drive too fast. Your wife, Sarah, she was coming home from her book club meeting. You left her there to die. I stayed with her until I heard sirens approaching," Emma said, tears flowing freely now. "She was conscious at first and she kept saying, 'Tell them I love them, tell them I love them.' When I realized the paramedics were coming, I panicked and called my father. He arrived just after the emergency services did and somehow convinced them he had been the driver. The scene was chaotic. It was dark and raining, and everyone assumed the disoriented young woman was a passenger or witness." The words hit Marcus like lightning. Sarah's last message, delivered by the person who had killed her, had somehow found its way to him through Emma's care for Tyler. "She was beautiful, Marcus. Even dying, she was worried about you and Tyler. She asked me to tell you not to let grief steal your joy, because Tyler would need his father to teach him how to live, not just how to survive." Marcus's own tears began to fall. "You've been carrying her last words for 3 years, along with the knowledge that I destroyed everything good in your lives. When my father confessed and took responsibility, I let him because I was a coward. But living with that secret was destroying me. I got clean, I went to school, I tried to build a life that might be worthy of forgiveness. And you came to work for us to ease your guilt." Emma shook her head. I came because my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months ago. He was dying and the guilt was eating him alive. He begged me to find a way to help your family before he was gone, said it was the only way either of us could find peace. I'd been watching from afar for years, seeing how Tyler was struggling, how isolated you both had become. I thought maybe if I could help him heal, if I could somehow repay the debt I owed to your family, my father could die knowing he hadn't protected me for nothing. You could live with yourself, Marcus finished. I never expected to love you both so much, Emma whispered. I never expected Tyler to become like my own child, or for you to become. She couldn't finish the sentence, but Marcus heard the words anyway. They sat in silence as the candles burned lower. Upstairs, Tyler was probably waiting for his bedtime story, blissfully unaware that his world was about to change again. The police want to arrest you tomorrow, Marcus said finally. Emma nodded. I know. I've been expecting this day for 3 years, but Marcus, before they take me away, please tell Tyler that everything I felt for him was real. Tell him that loving him taught me what his mother's love must have felt like. Marcus looked at the photo album Tyler had made, at the evidence of their fractured family learning to heal, at the woman who had been both their destroyer and their salvation. The district attorney will decide whether to prosecute, Marcus said finally. But when they ask for my victim impact statement, when they want to know how this has affected our family. He looked at the photo album Tyler had made, at the evidence of their fractured family learning to heal. I'll tell them about a woman who killed my wife but saved my son. About someone who carried the weight of her crime for 3 years and used that pain to help others heal. Emma's eyes widened. Marcus, that won't change the charges. I'll still face prosecution. I know, Marcus said, meeting her gaze. And maybe you should. But I'll also tell them that punishment without the possibility of redemption serves no one. Sarah's last words, according to you, were about love. Maybe it's time I learned what that really means. From upstairs came Tyler's voice calling for his bedtime story. Marcus and Emma looked at each other across the distance of their shared grief and complicated love. Tomorrow the police will come, Marcus said. We'll face whatever the legal system decides together. Tonight, let's go read to our son. As they climbed the stairs together, Marcus realized that justice and healing weren't always the same thing, but sometimes they could coexist. Emma would face the consequences of her actions, but Tyler would know that the woman who had taught him to love again had chosen to stay and face those consequences rather than run away again. Sarah's roses would bloom again next spring, wild and beautiful, tended by hands that had learned that the most profound love sometimes grew from the deepest loss. Behind them the candles burned down to nothing, but the light they had shared would guide them through whatever darkness lay ahead.